Chapter 781. Wilbur smiled immediately and said, "Your scars are healed. Come out now." Faye let out a sigh of relief and walked toward Wilbur, looking at him. All the scarring on her face was gone. Her skin tone looked better than before, and her skin was smoother too. She even looked a few years younger. Faye looked like a youthful girl in her 20s. Wilbur was amazed and muttered, "That old dragon really has all the solutions." Having recovered her beauty, Faye twirled around and said, "I can't believe it. I really recovered from all those scars and look younger than before." Then, she suddenly kissed him on the face, bringing a huge grin to Wilbur's face. Eileen coughed wryly and asked, "Wilbur, do you have any more of that stuff?" He looked at her and smiled, saying, "No, but I'll get you one in the future if I have the opportunity to." "That's more like it," Eileen said approvingly. Wilbur returned a smile. It seemed that women never changed when it came to beauty regardless of their age or competence. "I have to settle this thing with Jean, so I'll be away for a while. I'll leave this place in your care for now," said Wilbur while looking at Eileen. She nodded. "I hope we can have an honest discussion when I return," said Wilbur. She looked at him and said slowly, "All right. I wanted to talk to you too." "That's settled then." He then turned to look at Faye and said, "You should rest and let the subordinates handle the company." However, Faye shook her head and said, "No, I haven't been at the company for days. There are a lot of things that require my decision and signature, otherwise, it'll delay the progress of the company development." He shrugged and agreed with her decision. Faye was a businesswoman after all. It was unlikely for her to not work. "That's all for now. I'll go meet Jean." Wilbur smiled at Faye and walked past Eileen as he left the room. Suddenly, Eileen went to caress Faye's face. She shook her head and exclaimed, "This is amazing. It's so smooth. I want a skin like this too." "I haven't got to thank you, Eileen. I'll ask Wilbur to get some for you," Faye said while blushing. She felt a bit embarrassed to be caressed like that. Eileen smiled. She suddenly grabbed Faye's boob and laughed, asking, "Has this part grown too?" "What are you doing, Eileen?" Faye hurriedly dodged away and blushed hard. Eileen chuckled and said, "We're both girls. Why are you being shy about it?" Faye looked at Eileen and suddenly sensed a weird vibe. Meanwhile, Wilbur entered the room where Jean was staying. Jean was pacing frustratingly in the room. The 3-day wait was torture for him. "Mr. Zander, we may depart now," said Wilbur while looking at him. Jean abruptly turned around and told Wilbur, "That's great. Can we go now?" Wilbur nodded. Jean walked out with Wilbur without another word. They walked out of Sea Lake Island and hopped into Jean's car. The driver was a buff guy in his 40s. Wilbur glanced at the driver and realized that he was a beginner ambience level cultivator as well. It seemed like he was both a driver and bodyguard. He started the vehicle and drove toward the highway. Suddenly, Wilbur asked Jean, "Mr. Zander, what aspect do you think we should focus on first?" "I don't know either. What would you suggest, Mr. Penn?" asked Jean in a worried manner. Wilbur replied nonchalantly, "I think we should visit your father first. We need to find out what caused his illness, and if it's curable." "Mr. Penn, are you sure you can save Mr. Zander Sr.?" the driver interrupted. Wilbur looked displeased.